welcome to part 2 of my color grading process. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 yet, then I highly recommend that you go check that out first before we jump into Davinci Resolve. Basically, everything that happens before I color grade my images is explained in part 1. And once you've seen that, you get a much better understanding of what we're doing here, or a much more meaningful understanding. If you've seen that, welcome back to part 2. And I'm not going to hold you anymore. Let's go straight into Davinci Resolve. So here we are in Resolve. Now, this is one of the frames of the movie, and I'm going to show you basically how I got to this final image. Now you can see the node tree, the node tree is rather complex, and I'm not going to go through every single step. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's not a step-by-step tutorial how to achieve a certain look, but how my whole process sits together to get to a final image. But obviously a big part of this happens inside Resolve, so I figured we can't skip Resolve entirely. Okay, so we're going to reset this grade, and I'm going to go quite quickly here to get to my base structure. First one's a noise reduction node, and the second one, let's jump right to my nodes, the Powergrades. Now the first one is going to be a Generation 5 color science from Blackmagic conversion to Arri LogC. I'm going to append that. Now this tends to happen quite a bit. It copies it where I don't want it. Now this is a conversion to a Rec 709 based on the Arri. So we're going to get rid of the Rec 709 and compress these into a compound node. Put that here, compound. We're going to call this G5 to log C. Capital C. Okay. This puts us in a very flat starting position, exactly where I'd like to be. Now, from there on, I'm going to use Juan Melara's 500T Film Unlimited power grade. Now, as I said, please check those out. Watch his video tutorials as you download them. Please check out his work. And here we go. We're going to apply or append his crazy structure node graph here. Don't be afraid. Most of this we don't need to really touch, which is why I use his work. It saves me a ton of time, and he has things going on that I can't do. Okay, so what we're going to be using is this one and this one. I'll activate that node. Everything else is not really that important. I'm not using that ever, so I'm going to kill that node. These I could technically compress into one. I'm just going to leave them, but don't worry about this second row. And the third row, we're going to use the highlight roll-off, and the film curve and film blur and all that is happening here, and sharpening and grain. Might do some adjustments to the grain later, but don't worry too much about that at the moment either. Here is where the heavy lifting happens, so we're going to do some parallel nodes here. 3-4 nodes will probably do the job. And these here, the last 3, so the last one we don't need, and this is a warm pass, so we're not going to use that. Now these tints or those tints, I'm not always sure which ones I want to use. I flick back and forth between them, but I think we're going to use the primary one, the first one here to begin with, but I'll always leave this one aside just to have an option left. Like I said, this sounds complicated, but I'm using these two and these to do 99% of my work. And of course the first node, which is a noise reduction node. Now let's begin. So the image, as you can see, originally, this is what the camera saw, is very hazy. So we've used a lot of haze in the scene to create that glow. That is what got us that light shaft. So when I switch back to his 2083 or 2383 LUT, we can see there's actually a lot of glow going on. It's nowhere near where I want it to be. We want it to be dark, gloomy, and uncomfortable. But you can see that haze is glowing up all this light. Now, the outside world is the comfortable place that he doesn't dare to go to, and his house where this guy lives in is the place where he lives his paranoia. So this is going to be the uncomfortable, ugly place to look at. So the bathroom, as you can see, is giving us a great starting point, great location, and we have to darken down this image. Now I'm using a a Blackmagic Design control panel, so I can't show you everything I'm doing, but you can see down here, so I'm going to be using, in this first node here, I'm going to be using everything of the gain control to get control over my image. So we're going to darken down the image a whole bunch, and because the haze I'm using is not, you know, a $2,000 haze machine, it's fairly cheap, it creates quite a bit of like temperature in the haze, and yeah, it warms up the image a lot more than you might think. So I'm going to bring down the temperature to a bit of a cooler place, and mostly I'm looking at his skin to find a place where I'm comfortable with his skin. This is a bit of a feeling game, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at. Look at the exposure, maybe bring it down a little more. And this second node here is for my contrast, pivot, highlights and shadows. So I'm going to add some contrast to get a little more saturation in the image. We'll get rid of that later on, obviously. But that's what happens when you push contrast. And I'm going to maybe move my pivot to see where I want the contrast. Too much of this will create too many aggressive lines here, but bringing it down might work to have the contrast happen a little more in the shadow areas. And then I use my highlight and shadow sliders, these two here, to control a little bit more of the exposure. So I'll bring up the shadows a little more to even out the image, but there we go. Still, this is looking far too warm, so I'm going to go back to my primaries and to this node here. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this node here and work on my gain node down here to balance out the image a little more. Again, looking at his skin, I can pick my qualifier. Now I'm using two screens. This is why there's not that many panels on this screen here. On my left side, I can see my skin tone indicator is actually pretty good. So I'm in a good place here. Now this, if we go full screen, this is pretty much what reality might have looked like. Honestly, I can't really remember. This is ages ago. But, you know, judging by the image and judging by what I know what reality looks like, this is pretty close. It was a pretty ugly bathroom, very blue. And this represents reality, pretty much. So let's work on this image a little more. Get it to some look, a feeling, to enhance the feeling that we want to create in the scene. So this happens here. Let's figure out a look first. So, all right, call it look. And for that, in this node here, I'm going to be using my lift, gamma, gain, and potentially also my log wheels here to achieve a look. Now, I'm not going to go miles away from what we have, but it's going to help me create a mood. First of all, I want my highlights to be green. We're looking for an uncomfortable, disgusting feeling. Okay. So this is starting to push a lot of green into the highlights. Now I'm cheap with color grading. I'm going to use my temperature. So my temperature and tint, and with my control panel, I can even push some more green into there, and I can make this a lot cooler with my temperature and tint. Okay. This is starting to look quite nice. I turn it off and on again, off and on. So yeah, we got a nice little disgusting green look in here. To me, this is very, very saturated. So my saturation levels, I will bring those down a whole bunch as well. Okay, not too much. We don't want to lose him. I'll reset that and bring down the saturation again from the top. And there we go. Not too bad. I think we need to push a little color into the midtones and shadows. So I've only done the gain right now. Let's go to the shadows, or the lift, sorry, and get rid of that red on the tiles. Okay, the whole image is starting to turn a bit blue, so I'm going to go back to my temperature and tint down here, and maybe there we go, starting to look good. Put some tint in it and mess around with the temperature. Okay, I'll turn off the look node again. Starting to look nice. I'll go full screen, turn it off, and back on again. Not bad, not bad at all. Okay, now the bath is something we couldn't control. So let's go and change that. By couldn't control, I mean that's something we could not change on location. We couldn't repaint this bathroom. So we'll grab one of my favorite tools, which is 1, 2, 3. These 3 sliders here, or 3 panels here. They allow me to select a color range and affect it in a certain way, either by hue, by saturation, or by brightness. Let's begin with saturation. It's far too bright green. So we're going to grab all this here and maybe expand that selection and bring it down. Looks good. I'm just looking at my bath. The light we will probably affect later in a different node. Yeah, not too bad. Let's darken it down too. So I approximately know what range we're talking about here. Bring those back and darken that down. Okay, that is where I want it to be. Yeah, the bath looks super uncomfortable color-wise. Now I tend to have my curves, make sure that my curves don't contrast too strongly the actual color curve to avoid any artifacting or problems with my images. Okay, that looks good. Now, like I said, the light shaft needs adjusting. By adding contrast up here, we definitely killed a lot of the light. So let's bring it back in. Let's shape it. Now that light shaft was intentionally created on the location. We actually used an aperture 300D outside full blast with a Fresnel to create this light, and we knew that by backlighting the haze we would get a nice little shaft of light coming in. Okay, so I've made myself a power window and I put it up here. By pressing Shift H I can see where my light is, maybe narrow it down a bit, the beam, and soften the edges. Okay, I'm happy with the shape of that. Let's bring in some light. So I'm going to push my gain here into the scene. A little contrast. And okay, it's maybe a bit too much. Yeah, there we go. And I'm a big fan of turning things on and off again. And there you can see the light is back. So the next thing that's bothering me is the attention. We don't have enough attention on him. We have a nice color contrast. He's yellow. Everything else seems to be blue, greenish, so that's great. But we can enhance that. Like I said, this is all about enhancing what we caught in camera. So we're going to create another power window. I love power windows. Coming from photo editing, this is literally the thing I would spend most of my time doing in Lightroom as well, working with adjustment windows like this. And I've created myself a little window around him. And obviously I haven't done anything yet, so we can't see anything. I'm going to be pushing a little gain, or maybe a little contrast to get slightly deeper contrast between the shadow areas and the highlights on him. And maybe a little more gain. I'm very gentle here with the gain. It's all by feel and eye. And we want mid-tone detail in there. So we're going to push that, and that'll really make him look horrible. So I'm going to go full screen, turn it off, turn it on. There we go. Now that is how you create attention in your image. Okay, so the next thing that we can do to create more attention. So we're going to name this node here. I'm just going to call it him. It's just for me, really. So I need to know what node does what. I've created another parallel node, and in this node, we will enhance the feeling of this place. Now, I know it's already dark and gloomy. If we go back to full screen, it is a dark and gloomy place, but we can enhance that even more. This is a creative process, and we're allowed to do whatever we want. As Juan says in his videos, if it looks good, then it is good. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to create a vignette. Very simple. We all know what a vignette is. And I'll take it a little bit over to the right so we get most of the light around him. And I've inverted it, and we'll take it to the curves, and I tend to just bring it down like this. Quite dark up here. Maybe we need to move it over a little more. Okay, so if I turn it off, you see, it has focused even more attention towards our subject. But you can see if it's turned off, you can actually already see a vignette. This is the edge of the room here. There's an edge here, and we really turned off every light. We put a ton of negative fill behind the camera here to make sure that the light wouldn't bounce back into the scene and create a bright room. We wanted to have a beam of light that focuses on him sitting in the bath in a dark, dark, horrible place to be. And there we go. With the vignette, that looks a lot more enhanced. Now, one last adjustment I will do. I'm going to call this one the vignette. Let's create, let's create another parallel node, and we're going to call this the sink. Now, to me, the color here is annoying. We've got nice daylight balanced light coming in from the outside, and it's created a nice pool of light here, but this is either bouncing back or we still have a little bit of yellow light in the bathroom. But honestly, I don't like the color contrast between the bath and this. So let's go into this area, create another power window, soften the hell out of it, give it a bit of a spin. This is to avoid that you can actually see that there's masks going on in your image, and bring that there. And again, super simple. I'm going to go into my white balance nodes, or well, into my white balance settings here. I do this on full screen. I have the control panel I can do this with. So instead of pushing this into a warmer place, I'm actually going to cool this down and maybe give it a little bit of that greenness. Now overall, I think we're going very green or very blue. So maybe in our look node, we should adjust this. So I'm going to bring that sink down again. We're going to go to the green, blue-green area. Take a bit of saturation out of there. And now go to our look. And I think with our temperature and white balance, we can actually work a little bit on this and get this into a little slightly more realistic place. There we go. This looks pretty good. Now I'm going to deactivate all these nodes that have comprised the look. And this is technically what reality could have looked like, maybe slightly more contrast than there was in reality. But this is what the camera recorded with a Rec 709 look to it. And when we start activating our look, we've pushed it towards a bit of a cooler space. Then we adjusted the look and feel of the bath, which has affected a lot of the image too. The whole bathroom was a bit too blue. Then we've lost the light, so we've added more light. And looking at that, I think we can even push this down a bit more. There we go. Go back here. That looks good. Now he needed a little more attention. Activated that on him, make him look a little more awful to look at. Created a vignette to push our attention and make him feel even more alone and lonely. And then adjusted the white balance around the sink to bring the image all a bit more into one single realm. Now the good thing about this is my creative process. Everything else is basically balancing out an image and creating the base for my creative process, which means I can actually use this without these adjustments and apply it to different images, different indoor scenes. I can use it here, I can use it here, I can use it here, here. And you're starting to feel like there is a color palette going on in this. And that's thanks to using a big, the 500T color process, as well as the 2383 lot that, bring us in the same color palette that pushes that teal and orange look. And it helps us, bring the whole movie into a similar look. And then with my local adjustments here and with my look adjustment, which I will apply to pretty much every image, I can achieve a look throughout the film. And then here I'm basically just shaping your attention, pushing your attention to a certain area in the image. And these two up here, these first nodes, are just there to balance the image. So if I deactivate my look again, and I'll deactivate my balance, this was too warm. This is not what I wanted. This is not a very good starting place. I had to cool down the image. So that's what we did in the first node. Cooled it down and brought down the exposure to a bit more realism, where we were in real life. One, to get rid of some of the noise that was in the shadows that the lifted image, brings out. And two, to bring it to the real place. And the next node here is the contrast. How much contrast can we bring into the image and keep it still kind of real? So these are my balance nodes, and these will do the heavy lifting. They will take, they will bring the image to a place where it should be before I can do my look. And from there on, I can add my look and do all the attention giving that I want to do. And there we are. Now that might look brutal, but once you're watching the movie, this really gives you the feeling that is intended when we were recording the image in the first place. Color grading to me is is a process. It's a color grading process. It's not just a copy and paste on Resolve. A lot of this project, a lot of the look of this film was achieved in pre-production and being very deliberate and very careful about what was in the scene and how the scene was captured before we actually got to color grading. Every one of those steps, like I said, is an opportunity to push your image, to create a palette, to enhance the feeling of your story. Maybe next time, before you press record, think about how do I want the image to look afterwards, and what in my scene and what on my camera, in my equipment, can I use to go towards that image. And you will find that, you know, a lot of it can be done in camera, and a lot of it depends on what you capture in camera. And then the color grading becomes actually part of the process to achieve that final image. Okay, enough waffling for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe if you want to come back for more. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.